You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like have a drop down.
So we're not actually after production.
Right.
They're on
Because
poster and news.wiz.
I don't know if you can use the conditional logic for that.
All right, we are just after 12, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. For anyone listening online, we forgot our microphone today, so I'm talking directly at my computer. Everyone will be staring at me in the room, wondering why I'm talking to a computer. So if at any point you can't hear something, or something's not loud enough, or you didn't hear a question, please let us know so that we can repeat any information that you couldn't hear, so that you don't miss out on anything. My name's Ryan. I work with the WiscWeb CMS team. I typically am in charge of running these meetings. The most, if not everybody, on the CMS team is here today, so we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. We have a pretty light agenda compared to last time, which was almost the full session talking about WordPress. We have had a few follow-up questions and a few pieces of feedback come in that we just wanted to address in a quick, it's only like 4 slides, just to address a few things that people had concerns about or worries about, just to make sure everybody understands kind of where we're coming from and what the where we are at this point. But after that, we are open to questions, feedback, comments on anything that's going on from WordPress to your current website in OpenText that you're having troubles editing. So we will go ahead and get started. So I've kind of addressed these slides with a sort of a question, because that's kind of the easiest way maybe to understand it. These are some questions or issues that have come in. I will just kind of go through them one by one. So some people, before we made this announcement as well as after the announcement, some people were concerned about a cost associated with WordPress because other places on campus may or may not charge for WordPress. So is there going to be a charge from our service for WordPress? With any software, WordPress is free software. You see I have it in quotes there, because while WordPress is free, you still need hardware to install it on. You need people to upgrade it and support it. So while it is free software, it is not a free service. With that said, there are currently other WordPress options on campus that may or may not charge. That's part of what hopefully we'll be doing here in the near future, is understanding what else is on campus, what that looks like. But as a funded service, WiscWeb CMS will not charge customers for what we'll consider a base WordPress offering. So that may lead you to the question, what would be our base offering? This is, again, continuing what we do now. This is sort of the core of what our service does. We offer training, we offer onboarding, we offer support, we offer hosting, we offer domain name registration and URL, make sure everything lines up and is pointed to the right place. And then we'll provide WordPress a theme or themes and plugins for you to use to build your site. So that will be included in what we would call a base offering. So then, of course, the question, what if you don't like the base theme or want an additional plugin that we have not selected? So the first thing I'll say is we have no idea what plugins we're using yet. This is all completely up in the air. But eventually we will settle on some sort of set of plugins and some sort of set of themes, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, to be a few themes to select. So the short of it is we actually don't know how this is going to work yet. We've had several ideas bouncing around. Please don't take any of this as etched in stone and report back that we're trying to squash the rumor mongering as opposed to continuing it. So this is kind of where we're at right now. We have to talk to a lot of people about how this might work. But there are a couple factors into what we might be able to offer, and that is the 2 key factors would be funding and workload. At this point, we do not appear to be getting any more funding for the service. So while we are in this transition phase for OpenText and WordPress, we're doing it with the same staff, same staffing levels, supporting 2 products, including migrations, new customers, which of course gets into the workload. So we're doing more work with the same amount of funding and the same number of people. So as we figure out how that's going to work, options include continuing to keep what we would call a customization free of charge. This would be an option that would be slower, as our developers would be their time would be occupied with a lot of different projects And so it would be sort of you would fall in line with when your request came in, how much work it was, what the priority on it was, etc. It's possible that we would go to a model that customizations would be contracted through Do It ADI. This would be something you then work directly with them on. You would have to pay for it, but you would get exactly what you want. Theoretically, it should be faster because you're contracting for the work. You would set a timeline, stick to it, etc. There's also the possibility that customizations would come in regular updates. So if somebody requests a customization that everybody else would want, we may do that as part of some sort of software release cycle where a new theme, a new child theme, a new custom plugin would be developed and then released to everybody when it was completed and tested, etc. And of course, a combination of all of these may be what we end up with as a final product, which is, depending on what it is, it would fall into a couple different categories. I guess one thing I should clarify is what would a customization be? A customization would be something that requires our developers to create for you. This could be a custom calendar feature. It could be functionality in your site where, depending on what you want it to happen, pictures rotated through that were different than what we offered in the base theme. I'm trying to think of other common. So photo carousels are something we customize all the time. Color and CSS of your style of your site are things we customize all the time. And then there are other things like faculty lists that we customize all the time. Faculty list might be something that's a lot easier for us to customize, so it could fall into the maybe a free category because it's just creating a couple of new database entries and changing which order they appear in. But again, before everyone jumps to conclusions, we don't exactly know what this is going to look like. I more or less just wanted to say these are some of the options that are floating out there. We have no idea at this point how this is all going to shape up, and just be aware that the base service, if you need a website with the UW look and feel that provides training support, allows you to publish your site very easily, that part of the service for sure will be available to campus. Say free of charge, but it's a funded service. So, lastly, I had any questions, but we have. Oh, that doesn't show up very well. So we did set up a feedback list that our staff is on. It's CMS-WordPress-feedback at lists.wisc.edu. We are monitoring that list. We've already gotten several questions in via the list, so that's great. And then I will go to this KB doc in a second. This is an FAQ doc that we will be updating as new questions come in that we're getting or anticipate getting multiple times, and I'll go there after any questions or any comments come in. So, does anybody have any questions either in regards to what I discussed here or in addition? Yes, Jim.
Just to clarify, on a plugin would be something like the current accordion image, or is that correct?
So Jim asked a question about what would a plugin be. WordPress uses the term plugin as a sort of additional functionality that can be added onto your website. There's a library of hundreds of thousands of plugins for WordPress. They all have a variety of support options. Some of them are developed by high schoolers, part of a high school class, and never gets updated. Some of them are developed by companies who purchase them, and they do a good job maintaining them. And those are the ones we would certainly try to be targeting, because one of the issues with WordPress is that people don't update their plugins. They install something done by a high schooler 10 years ago, and nothing against that high schooler, but they're not in the industry of keeping that plugin up to date. A security loophole could come in, and then your site could get compromised because something like that. So we are interested in sort of vetting those higher-end plugins that have a lot of support from the vendor, who, when a new version of WordPress is released, the plugin typically will already have an update ready to go for that new version, or have one very soon after that. Now, Jim asked, is accordion panel example of a plugin? I believe the answer to that is yes. I don't know, Joe, if you have more experience in that, or it can vary, I think, because I think you could also incorporate them into child themes. But I will let Joe talk. If you can't hear what Joe's saying, let us know, and we'll figure out how to better make that happen.
Really, any sort of customizations to WordPress you can make into a plugin if you want to. So it's just kind of a way to package something in a way that you could distribute it if you wanted to. So if you just think of it as like a customization to WordPress, maybe someone didn't like the way something was done in WordPress, so they developed a plugin to like fulfill their needs, and that's really all it is.
So then, to build on my original question, when I go to the responsible template demonstration at demo.WiscWeb CMS at WiscWeb, there are navigation options, content options, layout options, media options, posting options, and other services. Regardless of whether you call this a theme, plugin, or customization, is the intent to have all of the stuff that's currently available in OpenText available in WordPress?
Okay, so Jim's question, for those who may not have heard it, was, is the intent to have all of the current features of the OpenText product, which, if you go to our demo site, includes things like accordion panels, photo carousel, navigation items, etc. Is it the intent to have all of those things in WordPress? The answer to that is yes. We are hoping that whenever we launch, and we have no timeline to repeat, day one, we open it up to people. Everything you could do in OpenText, you can do in WordPress. How you do it may be slightly different. How it ends up on the page may be slightly placed differently, but what you were able to do before, you are able to do again in however form that looks in WordPress. Yes?
I have two questions.
Yes.
I'm Meg. I'm now working with Jim
Okay.
at the Registrar's Office. When you say we have no timeline, can you at least say it'll definitely not be happening before a certain date?
Okay.
What's the...
Sure.
Like,
So,
how far in the future can you push the earliest possible?
okay, so question was about timeline and what is sort of the earliest we could potentially see this. So since last meeting, everyone on the CMS team has submitted sort of work estimates for what each of our pieces would look like. I do not know what that looks like. I know Kathy, I believe, is still evaluating that as a team. So
It's a complicated answer to what seems like a simple question. Yeah. I can tell you right now that John Krogman, who is the head of Do It, is working on a coordinated effort with other entities across campus to make sure that everybody is involved in the design of whatever WordPress offerings will be on campus. We have to wait for that decision. We're waiting for the university marketing templates to be finished. I think they have said mid-summer on those. You know, in the meantime, we as a team are going to put up a pilot instance so that we can start doing documentation, we can start worrying about training, we can start thinking about how we're going to support our current customers. So it's kind of complicated. The two main things we're waiting for: the coordinated campus effort, which may include getting a governance committee together and established, and then also the templates from university marketing. But in the meantime, we're continuing to get a pilot instance up. So I guess to answer your initial question, probably no sooner than midsummer at the very earliest, and it could be significantly later. Does that help?
Yeah. And when we talk about customizations, do you think there might be an option for units to do their own customizations to start with a base so that certain elements might be consistent, such as the templates and other basic functionality just gets built in from whatever the suitcase of plugins is going to be. But then could there be an option where units take it upon themselves to do their own template adjustments or plugins, you know, for their particular things? Is that describing a product that just won't be a part of WiscWeb CMS? You're welcome to host your WordPress site somewhere else.
I think the goal initially is that anything that we create, we could give you access to. Where we have to think about is how supportable is it, right? So it doesn't mean that we could, if you wanted to do kind of your own thing, that you could take everything that we had and lift it up and put it in a hosted environment that could be anywhere on campus. I mean, I'm not sure where these things are going to end up, but then you could tinker with it all you wanted and do whatever you wanted, and we could support you to a certain extent, but then after that, you're kind of on your own customizations. Depending on the nature of the customization, if it's something like colors or something that would not bump into other people or other sites in a multi-site environment, that you would be responsible for. If they say, okay, we're upgrading the template, go look at tasks to make sure that it works. You know, that's another option. But until we kind of get things up and going, it's hard to completely answer that question.
Right. So I guess one other thing.
So just to jump in on that is, not only will we have to figure out how, but if you're doing your own thing in regards to plugins or customizations, there's also a certain extent of training that can't be done, because it may not be a plugin that we're working with, which means that as a trainer, I'd have no idea how to use that plugin that you might be using. So we'll run that risk as well. It's a consultant/training.
Yeah.
So,
One of the big challenges we faced with WordPress as opposed to OpenText is OpenText is very hard to learn, and therefore even I think Jim and maybe one or two other people have dabbled in sort of editing their own templates and things like that, because it's not easy. It's not a matter of putting code in one place and saying done. You have to hook things into certain places and then submit them to workflow and publish them out, and if you enter something incorrectly, what seemingly might take out a page takes out your whole site. With WordPress, there are a lot of WordPress developers both on campus and in the market space. We know that they will want to make tweaks to their site because they know how to do it. The question is, how do we provide a service to you while keeping, and maybe allowing you to do those things while still keeping it supportable, secure, etc. Everybody knows the story of the department that hired a student over the summer to build something they left, and you know, it either never got maintained and then no one knew how to use it, or it had a security vulnerability that the student didn't know about. So these are some of the things that from an individual department running WordPress on their own can figure out how to deal with on their own, but from a centralized service, we have to make sure that what we open up is supportable, and we don't want to be doing security fixes every week for a site that gets hacked. That would not be a good use of the dollars spent on the service.
Or even worse, someone gets into someone else's site, which allows them to get into
Correct.
all the sites.
Right. Right. So there is a big security feature here, which, in addition to OpenText being difficult, you know, keeping things locked down is also, from a centralized service support, one of the reasons we've done that. WordPress will present a challenge in that fashion more so than OpenText. Question?
OpenText up. Is OpenText still going to be supported security-wise? Are we not going to have an end of life for OpenText, or are you guys going to continually support security updates to it? Not features, but just security in general.
That's a good question. So the question is, what does OpenText look like going forward? Are we going to continue to update that software, both from a security, more so from a security front, but also as new patches and things come out? Well, there was just recently a security update for OpenText that I think we're currently in the process of evaluating and installing. So while that product exists on campus, we will continue to install patches and updates that specifically regarding security. If there are other significant fixes, we may also do those, just because, as we said last time, there's going to be a long migration process for this. We have people who've invested a lot of time and money and effort into their current sites, and we don't want to say, figure out what you're going to do in the next 12 months because we're shutting it down. So that will be a long, drawn-out process. Eventually, I said, you know, we'll get to an end where there's 5 sites left, and at that point, we'll have to work with each of those people and put together a timeline for migration. But initially, we are not going to set a 2019, you know, you're done. So we don't have that. And will not until we get much later in this process. Great. Yes.
So I may have totally missed out on the fact that we're switching to WordPress.
Okay.
But when we first started 2 years ago, and Matt came over and trained me on WiscWeb CMS, is all I've ever known it as.
Yep.
And I had the choice between going with WiscWeb CMS and WordPress.
Okay.
I went with WiscWeb CMS because it's free, it's supported, and I have good training.
Okay.
Are we saying then that, well, I guess why then are we moving from, and I'm fine with whatever you do, but we're moving away from the way it is now, the software we're using, to this WordPress that was an option in the beginning outside of, because one of the things I heard was there's a whole camp of WordPress and there's a whole camp of WiscWeb CMS.
Yep. And there's actually, and there's Drupal as well, and there's
Drupal.
extra, and there's more than that, but I would
Those
say,
were the two
yes,
big ones,
sure.
it seemed like. And what I heard was with WordPress didn't have, like the do-it support and training, and we would have to pay for it. So why are we moving from what I was trained to, which I probably don't, but why are we moving to WordPress?
Sure. So we did address this in the last meeting, but I'm more than happy to do it again.
Okay.
And there'll be, if you go to this FAQ, you might get a little more there. And if you go to our previous month's brown bag, you can watch that because a lot of that is addressed there. So I'll give you the
Well, you don't have
2 minute.
to.
I'll give you the 2 minute version. There was a committee on campus that was put together to evaluate CMS software, looking at cost, looking at usage, looking at industry standard. What came out of that was that there are a lot of WordPress users on campus who wanted to get more from a centralized service than what we were providing, because OpenText is very locked down, if you will. What we develop in there can't be consumed by other people. So from a standpoint of, even if someone doesn't use the WiscWeb CMS service in the future, it's very possible that they could consume plugins that we purchase, because when you purchase a plugin for WordPress, it is a site license, so we could get a UW-Madison license for a plugin. So someone who is using WordPress that is not in our service could just say, hey, can I get access to that plugin and install it on my site? No problem. Also from custom development, let's say we developed a calendar plugin that worked with Office 365 that people wanted. That would be something that our developers spend time in, develop a custom plugin, and campus could consume even if they were not using our version of WordPress. So it is more of a sort of community feel-good sort of software for us right now. It is also much more of an industry standard. OpenText is not really well known. WordPress is probably the single largest CMS software that is out there right now. So we decided that the committee that was put together to evaluate the software is making a final recommendation, I believe, in June this month. And we decided to try to work on this a little bit ahead of time so that we did not want a recommendation to come out and have us have no idea what WordPress was. So we've been to a couple trainings. We've been working in WordPress. We said, yeah, this probably makes sense, and so that's why we made the announcement, while there's still a lot of work to do yet, specifically with campus. So that's the 2 minute version, but we have there's a little bit more out there
And
as
when
well.
it's time to transfer over, when I bring up limnology.wis.edu, will it look the same? Or will it be like, whoa, things changed?
Sure.
over
So the
there?
question is, she has limnology.wis.edu, when I transition it over, will it look the same? I guess the answer to that is no, but the reason for that is the theme that we're going to be building, that is being built in WordPress, is going to resemble the new wisc.edu. Doesn't mean you have to have the full page hero carousel like they do, but it's going to be styled similarly to that. So if you have the current template, which has the big red banner and the old font, it's going to look different. But functionality-wise, you're going to be able to put your same headers and the same navigation items in there, have the same sub-pages. They'll just be recreated and basically just be skinned differently.
And am I literally going to recreate every page of the website?
Question is she going to have to recreate every page of the website? We don't know yet. We're trying to figure out if there's an easy way to migrate some or all of the data into WordPress. Depending on how that works.
Right?
Depending on how that works, it may work to varying degrees. We may help people with that process. We know that about a third of our sites are going to be 10 to 15 pages. Easy. After that, it's going to be, larger sites, more customizations, and those are the ones that are going to take more of our time. So. And as part of this as well, once we get a pilot or something stood up, we can give people access to build out a project, and then you can do it sort of on your own timeline while your old site is still like that. That's sort of the goal here. We know that our customers, sometimes the website is 5 hours a week or less that they work on. If we can elongate that process, even if you have to manually recreate things, but you don't have to be done by a certain time. You just, hey, I've got some time. I'm going to build out 10 more pages today, or whatever. That you can do that over the course of 6 months, a year, 2 years, and have it be easier on you rather than, okay, everybody, time to go.
Can I add a little bit there?
Yes.
So, full disclosure here, I am on the CMS committee. I'm trying to represent all of the WiscWeb CMS people on that committee as strongly as I can. So 2 other inputs on it is that there's a certain amount of money that's spent on the license for OpenText. And that money is only used by the people who use OpenText, which is not more than 20 or 30% of the population of campus, but it paid more by 100% of the population. So it's not that probably what the fair situation to have is to have a small percent of the population using something that's paid for by all. So there's some adjustment. The thing is 3 years ago, WordPress was not in a state that it was an enterprise supportable product. You could put your own WordPress installation up. You could put WordPress installation up for department, but putting WordPress installation up for campus wasn't really doable 3 years ago. And we believe it is now. And so that's why we're from OpenText.
Without repeating it, Jim gave a couple insights from the recommendation committee about cost to campus from the OpenText license, as well as WordPress evolving into a more supportable state now than it was 3 years ago. Yes.
Ryan, your comment about WordPress plugins having site licenses for all of WiscWeb is intriguing. Are there efforts now to build a library of plugins that have been purchased so that they could be used by others without being purchased a second or 20th time?
So the question is about WordPress plugins, and is there an effort now to create a catalog of what's been purchased on campus by these other groups? As far as I know, no, that is not being done now. I am hoping that as we move forward, that is something that emerges. We have, for a variety of reasons, not engaged yet with campus as far as we will. But I do know that some conversation have sprung up on, I believe, the WordPress email list. But I've heard that there are multiple plugins, the same version of the same plugin that costs $200 purchased by 5 different departments on campus. That's something that we, if campus would like us to, and it seems to make sense that we could create that catalog, find that plugin, include it for both in our offering as well as then to campus, so that someone could say, hey, I want that plugin, and can get it, from us.
It may also be helpful from a deployment perspective if we knew where it was plugged into on campus.
Sure.
So if I see that Limnology is using a plugin that seems like it would solve a problem on my site, I might be able to reach out to a specific user of it to find out how it works.
Right. So
I think our goal would be to mock up the demo site as much to sort of meet that need as well. When Jenna built out the demo site, she did a great job of on the pages with the demonstration content classes, she also had links to sites that were using those content classes. And I think that would be something that we would try to recreate as well, because people would want to see. And again, speaking to something that Lance said earlier about the fact where if somebody wants to use a specific type of plugin or a specific type of customization, other people might not be aware of it, but might be interested in it. So we would want to try and recreate that sort of effort when we move to the new WordPress demo site.
Yeah, so, and I guess my follow-up to that would be, there's, again, a good portion of this that's up in the air. We will attempt to work with campus to do what makes sense for the service.
I'll just jump in here real
Yeah,
quick.
go ahead.
There will be a campus committee or advisory group or something along the lines that will design probably that piece. I believe that's part of the recommendation, not only for WordPress but for Drupal as well. To have a curatable plugin library where people can go and get the plugins, and maybe WiscWeb CMS will or will not support all the plugins in there. But there should be a library that says, okay, this is what this plugin is, here is the support contact for that, here is where it's installed, and here's where you go get it. And that may or may not be our team. It might be, maybe only 1 or 2 people on campus are using it, and they're not using WiscWeb CMS. They have their own plugin, but the idea is to have a coordinated effort, for, like I said, for WordPress and for Drupal.
I'm just curious about the committee, things like that. Are those reports available to the public at some point about the whole WordPress, this with CMS?
Yes.
Like the sites that are on there.
Well, there was a survey done by this committee that was presented to MTAG, and there's an MTAG website that has at least the survey results. And this month, I believe, once this meeting happens, they'll publish the findings as well. Perhaps next, either via email or via maybe the next brown bag, we'll send that out. I think it might be worth it to wait for the presentation this month so we can send the whole thing out. But yeah, we can. That'll be publicly available on the MTAG website, which we'll send out at some point in the next month. Once it
That's on
happens.
IT Whiskey. Their pages and meeting minutes and stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
And to dig through there, you can find it.
Any more questions? Are we being specific enough? Sometimes I feel because we don't know, we're trying to be, sometimes not very specific because we don't know.
Feel free to tell me if this is inappropriate, but I'm wondering if you could do an informal survey, how long you, as WiscWeb CMS users, think is reasonable to keep your open text before it is end of life, because the committee is recommending some time. But we are recommending there will be time when open text will come along because of budgetary constraints. And so, what's a reasonable time?
Well, I can tell you we just redid an entire main site that we had in our department. And it took probably half a year to do. I mean, this is a highly customizable site. It's not just some, cobbled together template-based one. It's a separate template, its own, no other site on campus like it. So, and I know that the department that I have is very specific about their type of website. I mean, I could say that could probably take another whole year, especially if it's WordPress, because WordPress is based on plugins. It's not something that can be customized the way that I think open text can be. So, I mean, function-wise, if you want to take away ability for a team to make a function or some kind of specific, like carousel, photo carousel, whatever it is, for open text, I say fine, but it's like security-wise, I don't know how long something like that would take to switch over to open WordPress. I would say I'd want that for years ahead of time, at least just as security-wise support.
Did you say 4 years or for a year?
Years.
Years. As
Yes,
in
I'd say a year.
5, 10.
I would say 5 to 10 because it would take a year probably to switch over the website to be exactly how my department that I'm working with would want the site. I mean,
Which department?
English, but we also have sub-departments like ESL.
And it's just a straw poll. I'm just trying to get a feel for what people think. So 5 to 10.
I think it depends on the amount of support that's available for transitioning. So from our perspective, as soon as it's feasibly possible, we would be willing to go to WordPress, right? There's some stuff with we don't want to move during budget season, right? So after that, we're game for switching. Which if there's somewhere to submit to the CMS team, like here's the first date, we'd be willing to move That way it helps you, if it helps you align projects or figure out transition, right? So we're willing to go, but if we get to that point and if we get to that point and it's, you guys are on your own, we really don't have the staff to support moving pages, that's a much longer process.
So just to clarify, the context this comes in is the licensing for OpenText, which is the tune of $70,000 or so dollars, and the cost to support the infrastructure behind OpenText, which is approximately $100,000. We're talking about $170,000. And when the new Drupal WordPress service goes up sometime in the future, there's going to be money that has to be allocated for that also. And so there's this point where there's someone somewhere that's going to have to come up with money to support the old infrastructure and the new infrastructure. And how long does that go on for is the question. How long is campus going to support these separate infrastructures? And at some point, somebody's going to want to say, we don't want to spend that $170,000 a year anymore. We want to move it over. And so that's why I'm kind of asking the question. It's not a support question from Kathy's team or whatsoever. It's merely that there's pressure from groups who are currently not using OpenText to stop paying for the use of OpenText.
And I get that, and I didn't mean to phrase it as a support question necessarily, but the support available determines how long I would tell you to keep that open. It's not, you know, if they, I mean, it's a staffing issue, right? If everybody is at full capacity within the WiscWeb CMS team, there's no extra capacity to help sites move over, right? And if we have to do that all on our own, we don't have someone besides myself who is not even necessarily in my position description to be doing website maintenance. So if you know that it comes to that and we've got this complex website that I have to move over by hand, that's a much longer process than if, okay, we were able to transition 90% of it using WiscWeb CMS resources, and now you have to go in and test and maybe modify 30 pages instead of 300.
And that's, you know, that's part of this process that we're looking at. We have commitment from Do It that you guys are not going to be left hanging. It's not going to be like, oh, you know, we said 5 years, how we meant 6 months. No, it's not going to be that way. Do It's very concerned about the current customers. We want to make sure that you are taken care of. And we have to take a hard look at, and we're in the process of doing that, and what, if anything, we can automate. You know, I mean, if we can even just get the text in, that's huge. You know, and then rearranging text is a lot different than retyping text or copying and pasting it. So we have some people working on figuring out how to export out of OpenText into WordPress. The idea would be that we would make this as incredibly simple as we possibly can, and that, you know, maybe we free up some things by not doing other things to help with resources. We don't have any of that information yet. We don't have any of those answers yet. All I can do is reassure you, though, that you're not going to be left hanging.
Yeah,
and you know,
I'm sure that the CMS team will do whatever is within your capacity to help with that process. I'm not questioning.
But I think campus will as well. I don't think campus wants to leave you guys hanging. I really have not gotten that feeling from any of the conversations that I have been a part of.
So I'm going to rotate back to this slide real quick, but this third option, this options include, this could be a moving target as well, where we may, you know, if you need heavy customizations for your site, we may not offer those until we've done a migration so that we can focus on the migration. These are all things that we have to figure out. So while what the service looks like when we initially launch it, it may look different in 3 years after people have moved over a large percentage of it. It's a moving target. But as Kathy said, we're committed to the people who are in the product now to ensure that your site stays live, able to update it, works as intended, and when we're able to, we'll move you to WordPress, recreating that functionality as one-to-one as possible. Maybe what web design looks like in 3 years is also going to be different than what it looks like now. So maybe there's new things that come out that we can leverage that you used to do it this way, now it works this way. Yeah, it's going to be fun. Everyone smile.
Well, thank you, because that helps me when I go back to advisory committee as the representative of WiscWeb CMS to say, these are our concerns, this is what we need to make sure of, and the writing in the committee recommendation doesn't have a hard date of, not really as a suggestion, for 6 months or something like that. Make sure
Right. If I were to echo
what you were talking about before, where it's like, yeah, most of those sites are going to do 10 pages, so you would love, but then you would contact directly the people who are the big ones.
That's right.
So it's like, obviously something like me would
absolutely
probably have to deal a little
Yep.
more with.
And one of the other things is, a lot of our customers, and Jim, I think you know this, are not people who, as Sarah said, that's not even in their position description to make a website yet. They've been tasked with it. They've slowly built it 3 months, 6 months to a year, and to tell them to move in a short amount of time, it's not that feasible without our team's help. So again, lots of moving parts in that.
I do have one additional comment to add, just from the infrastructure standpoint, about the design of the different types of applications. So when you go to a WordPress site, your web browser makes a request to a server that then usually looks to a database and a file server to try to get information about what is the page and actually be when it gets rendered. In the case of the way OpenText works, the current software we have under WiscWeb CMS, all of that, what goes on the page, what gets put together, all that kind of stuff, and all of the editing happens on back-end servers located at WiscWebCMS.wis.edu. From there, they publish out to many different web servers across campus. As far as the ability to still use those pages depends exclusively on those servers that you're publishing to. Some of those servers are ours. We've got like most of your tests, a lot of your test sites are like at preview.wiscwebcms. That's a server that we have. There's stuff to do with shared hosting, engineering, like I'm trying to remember. There's a whole bunch of places across campus that you could have published your website to. If anything changed even today, like let's say we have an outage on the actual editing environment, which is why all of our maintenance windows talk about how, hey, there's the editing environment is going to be down. That's the editing software itself. It's the thing that puts the pages together and publishes them out. Your website doesn't go down when that happens. So this is going to be a change. And taking the English thing as an example, if you had everything you wanted in the site and you didn't need to do any updates for a couple of weeks, the CMS editing environment could be down the entire time, and it doesn't matter. One of the tie-ins then of the licensing cost question, as Jim pointed out, is actually that we don't have, the license is such that if we stop paying the license and we stop doing the maintenance for that, we can't use the software anymore. Some companies have it where you stop paying for the maintenance, you just don't get any updates. And that's unfortunately not the way this one's set up. So when we stop paying it, we need to stop using it. So that's another tie in there. But as far as there is, your website itself won't disappear. So maybe another example, the graduate catalog and the undergrad catalog, those have been pretty much on like a once-a-year published cycle. So in theory, CMS could have been gone for an entire year before they needed to actually have the next version of whatever they're publishing up. That's a different case. Most of you don't have a once-a-year published cycle, clearly. So it's a different case. But again, just to put this in perspective, this is a little bit different. As far as the what would happen if you did start your migration process and the licensing went away and stuff like that, you'd still be able to log into the server we published to. So in this case, on shared hosting for English with CDU, and you could go open up Dreamweaver and pop in updates as expected, because the finished product is HTML files that come out of the CMS.
But we're not going to do that.
Right. These are kind of worst case scenario things, but just want to put that out there as an example. Again, with WordPress, one of our other examples is that, all right, so if the database goes away at any point, your web page probably isn't going to render. So that's a completely different kind of uptime characteristic. That's, that's how this works. And so those are things we're going to need to architect around as well. So
Is the OpenText site license a flat fee, or is it scaled by number of users?
We have unlimited users on it, and we got a real discount for doing that. So even if we decrease the users, then our fees would actually go up. So
because we'd be revisiting the license, yeah.
So there's no benefit in rapidly clearing off the 10-page website.
Unfortunately not. We can't even shut off servers and get something back, because we also had an unlimited license for a number of servers that had it installed. So,
and again, this isn't something that's going to happen in the next week or month or even 6 months. I mean, they're not even gonna there won't even be the WordPress infrastructure on campus. We're not making a recommendation to MTAG until this month, and then there has to be a committee formed to figure out how it's all going to be implemented. So I don't personally expect a WordPress, enterprise-wide WordPress environment for 6 months, a year, or even longer. Now, the WiscWeb CMS team may move faster than that, they move slower, and I know those are two kind of separate things, and how those are going to gel is to be determined. So this isn't something like, oh my gosh, it's going away tomorrow. It's something like, in a year, we've got to talk about it some more, and we'll hopefully continue to talk about it, and hopefully you guys can get a hold of me and say, Jim, this is our concern, and then I can voice it to me and keep that channel.
Is there potentially then a middle ground where a unit could begin to develop a WordPress site, which later then gets sucked into the WiscWeb CMS instance of WordPress, so that if it's a year or 2 years out, we don't lose that?
It's time. I mean, it's possible.
Okay.
It depends on what's being developed and what we have, and if we can suck it in, or, you know, I don't know that we're completely ruling anything at this point because we don't have enough data to do that. But it would be something if you know, and if you choose to do your own site, there will be places, there are currently places to host it on campus, and you can do that. There's nothing stopping you from doing that right now if you want to, other than if you want to use the campus template for the new Whisk look and feel. I don't think that's quite ready yet. But it will be, and you could certainly do that if you wanted to.
But certainly building the page database, you know, the content database.
You can certainly do that. There are import and export options.
Yeah.
I don't know how clean some of them are, but it should get most of it if you did that. And if it was using the same template, the same plugin structure, the same, you know, there wouldn't be any problem with doing that. We've already talked about doing that with some other sites that contacted us and exist. So.
Yeah, I've had several folks who have come through training, and we've been talking about in trainings the fact that we are moving to WordPress eventually, and they've asked sort of that same question. Well, how can I get better prepared? And the theme is out there, and if you have a place to host it, you can tinker around and get more comfortable with using the WordPress dashboard and the page creation and the post list creation and things of that nature. So yeah, the ability is out there, but we don't know what it's going to look like for us, so we don't know how much. We don't know how much to recommend.
Yeah, right.
You know, putting a lot of effort into that when we don't know what the import option is.
Yeah.
Personally, I think even if it's still a year off, I think it's a good idea to start thinking about it, start looking at your site, and I guess correct me if I'm wrong, Kathy, but or if you're not comfortable with this, but I would be willing to sit down with any groups that want to just start taking a look at things to assess like what is currently on the site, just so that we're kind of aware of what we'll need to move. I'd be curious to sit down with you and take a look at the English site, just because it's one that I haven't worked with a lot. So I actually can't say like what kind of functionality you guys have and things like that, but that would definitely be interesting. So I guess if you were interested in anything like that, if you're comfortable with it, like just send an email to CMS support and call my name out. My name is Gemma. We'll sit down and have a little meeting.
And a lot of the conversation in the trainings have been so to kind of go with the English example is, well, we have X many sites. My recommendation to them would be to start to look at the ones that might be the easiest to convert and the easiest to move over. So what we've been doing, which is try and find the ones that are just 10 to 15 pages of text and a few pictures. That would take us
Which we have a lot
no
of,
time.
actually.
Yeah. That would take us not a lot of time at all to recreate. And from your standpoints, I would say that would be something to do on your own, is to take a little bit of self-analysis of your sites and your projects and go, you know, do I have something that is so extravagant that I couldn't just recreate it with a couple of copy and pastes into a WordPress text area? In a lot of cases, I think people overestimate how long it would take them, because really it is just copy and paste, get those images back up into your media library, and you're off and running from that standpoint. Certainly we do have some projects that are much more elaborate and have a lot more functionality that we do need to address, but from the standpoint of when we actually do say go for the WiscWeb CMS WordPress, my recommendation would be request a project and start tinkering around and start copying and pasting and trying to recreate it as best you can on the go from there. I wouldn't wait. I wouldn't wait for us to come up with our migration process if it's not something that would require you to wait that long.
This is also, the word opportunity comes up a lot in our discussions as we talk about WordPress. This is an opportunity for our service to look at itself and say, can we do things better? Is there a better opportunity here for campus? I would encourage you to do that internally at your own sites too. Go look at universities are doing, other departments are doing. Go look at, I always tell people, go look at Apple and Amazon. They spend millions of dollars on web optimization because that is a huge part of their business. We had somebody last week with 12 items in their navigation bar, and I said, that's a lot. Like, I'm a user there. Am I going to really go through 12 options? And I said, well, what does Apple have? Apple has 7. They have 7 options. If you have more options than Apple, I would say, that's something that as you move forward and start thinking about what a site may look like in WordPress, you may want to take that time to redesign. It's an opportunity. I realize not everybody's going to have the time to spend either meeting with us or meeting with your department to think about how your site works. But if you do, or we can elongate that process for you, and you can spend 2, 3, 4 months thinking about how you want your site to work. Look at analytics if you don't have that installed. Take a look at what pages people are visiting, what your abandon rate is. What you can use this time to think about how your site should look, and then you rebuild it or take what's migrated into WordPress and switch things around to make it work better for you and your end users. So there is a tremendous opportunity here, both from our service side as well as end user side as well.
To add to that, when you talk about redesigning the website, people often confuse and muddle that because there are 2 parts to redesign. One is redesigning how it looks, what color it is, and all that kind of stuff, and the other is redesigning the information architecture. And I think that the information architecture is the part that we don't do enough work on, in my opinion. The first place to start with that is with your customers, and I like to call them customers, even though we think of the students or whatever, but they're our customers. And so, going out and surveying your customers and seeing what they think they want on your website is really the place to start. Because often we design a website and we put the stuff up there, and the customers only use 10% of it because it's what we thought they needed, not what they thought. And 80% that's not there is stuff they want that they can't find.
And I also find that a lot of groups design based on how they're set up internally, which is not necessarily how a user would prefer to navigate your site. So consider that too, that just because you have a group called this doesn't mean that's what it should be called at a tab at the top of your navigation.
Yeah, I think Ryan hit it right. Opportunity is the word that we really want to start using as we move forward here. We want to take this opportunity to help people not only migrate over to WordPress and things like that, but also from Jenna's standpoint, where she was willing to come out and meet with folks, we really want this to be an opportunity for you to reevaluate what you are delivering to your audience. And is there a more efficient and effective way to present your content to your audience that's going to become even more emphasized as we move into WordPress as well. And then we're running closer. So the last thing that I want to say is we want you guys to be more in communication with us and not wait for this monthly meeting to come up with these conversations. If you have a thought, please get in touch with us, no matter how it is that you get in touch with us, either individually or through the email list, because while we certainly have a good idea of what we need to do to make this as easy and painless as possible for you, we're not you guys. And so the more that you can communicate with us and the more that you can tell us, hey, this is a concern of mine, the better we can communicate that kind of stuff up to do it. We can communicate that stuff to Jim. We can communicate that stuff amongst the developers to make sure that the moment we say go, it really is as smooth of a process as we can make it for not only you guys, but also for us, because, we don't want to offer something and, to put it bluntly, screw it up. So, don't don't wait to talk to us. Get out in front of it and talk to us as much as you can to make sure that we can address all the needs that you guys have.
I did want to show this KB article. If you go to kb.wisc.edu, WiscWeb CMS, it's in there, WordPress FAQ right now. It's very easy to find because it's the last updated document. Otherwise, you can bookmark this page, or if you just write down the number 63436 and type that in here, we'll find it in the KB. We are just keeping this up to date. All the information and questions that have been asked over the last month or since the last meeting that we feel is something that we would be going to be asked multiple times is here. We will keep it updated. The email feedback is here as well. So this is out there for consumption. We have 5 minutes left. We are more than willing to continue taking questions, but just wanted to keep everyone, know what time it is, so that if you need to leave around 1 or soon, you can do that. So, are there any other questions, concerns, feedback? Okay, so if anything does come up, as Matt said, please email us. If you can't remember the KB or this, email us. Just send it to our support list, and we'll make sure it gets to where it needs to go. As you know, we have a lot of work to do on our end, but we do want to make sure that we're accounting for as much as your guys' concerns as possible, and make sure they are heard. So, if you have any other questions, we will be around until everyone leaves. Thank you.